Tonight's session is on the topic of how to handle irritating, annoying, and infuriating comments by family members. Now, of course, we're under pressure. Parents are under more pressure than we were before, especially during COVID. Financial pressure, marriage pressure, being at home pressure, dealing with people on top of each other. Teenagers and children are under more pressure because school is on again, off again, and we're on Zoom, and our attention spans are very, very short for children, trying to focus on school. A lot of pressure, not seeing their friends, not having their usual outlets. And we get often very irritated at the best of times. And right now we are experiencing the worst of times. So how do we handle being on top of each other? How do we handle these closed spaces? And how do we handle not stepping on each other's toes where things escalate and things blow out of control? So people in the same family who love each other one moment, who care about each other, can lose it in an instant. There's a fine line between love and anger, or love and hate. And I believe that is because it's not a line where love is here and hate is here. It's a circle. Love is here and hate is here. Love is here and anger is here. They're right next to each other. It's not so far away. It's not linear. Time is not linear. Time goes in a spiral. And so too, relationships don't happen linearly. They happen in a spiral, in a circle. So love goes here and we get angry. The same intensity that we can love with, we can also be angry with or hate with, or people annoy us. And who is it that we lose it with? We don't usually lose it with a neighbor, except in our own house, and we mutter under our breath at our neighbor, or the person in our synagogue, or the person who hurt my feelings at a meeting. But the people who we usually lose it with, and the people who usually we clap al hate for, that we hit our hearts for on Yom Kippur, are our spouse and our children. That's where our shalom bayis is, where we clap al hate. So the people closest to us who we're supposed to love, and we do love, also infuriate us so much because perhaps we expect so much from them, or we expect more from them, or sometimes we expect more from ourselves. And we get frustrated with ourselves when we lose it, and we get angry with them. And we say, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I lose that again? So how can we handle other people's comments to us? And how can we hold our tongue and be positive with each other in terms of giving comments and receiving comments? One answer is to say nothing, is to keep quiet and keep shalom bayis. Keep quiet and keep peace in the home. That is often the right approach. Silence is golden. And yet, at sometimes, it's very difficult to hold our tongue. Try it. I'm sure you've experienced it yourself, where you really want to have the last word. You really want to correct the situation. The issue is, do you want to be right, or do you want to get along? And the saying goes, it's not whether you're right or wrong, it's merely how to get along. If you want to prove your point and say, I am right and you're wrong, then you're making a relationship in a family an adversarial litigation process, an argumentative process. I'm right, me against you. But if we are collaborative, if we are working together in a family, it doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong. It's whether the family unit is going to operate well as a well-oiled machine. Doesn't matter whether I'm right or you're right. What's best for our family? So to engage in this kind of process, we have to stop using the language of you and I, and use the language of us, we. What's best for us? What's best for our family unit? What's best for our mishpacha? What's best for our family? What's best for the relationship? To see the relationship as something bigger than just merely you and me as individuals, but we become a unit, we become a team. And we have to act in that fashion, say, let's put our heads together and figure this out of what's best for our family, what's best for you and I together as a couple. That is the ideal situation, to see ourselves as us, as we, as a couple, as a family, and work it out together with calm heads and calm emotions to be able to work out what's best for our family by mediating, negotiating, discussing it. Now, plan B, that is often not the way it goes. It's the ideal to strive toward. But what happens when we get hurt, when our egos clash with our husband, with our wife, with our children, and we're in the moment and we forget to say, how can we work this out, darling, when you just insulted me and said that I am a lousy cook or a lousy person or inconsiderate or irresponsible? It really hurts. So in the moment, I forget that we're a we. It feels like it's you and me instead of the we. And therefore, we have to remember the second rule. And that is, how can I express my honest feelings in a way that will make it possible for the other person to hear me and even consider what I have to say? Let's say that again. How can I express my honest feelings to put the other person in a position where they can hear me and therefore consider what I have to say? If I am not listening, if I am attacking, the other person will shut down and will hear words but not integrate them, not absorb them. They're not listening, and if they're not listening, there's no communication. You know the famous question, whether if a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to hear it, is there a sound? Famous question. What happens when a tree falls in a forest and there's nobody in the forest for hundreds of miles around? Is there a sound? What do you think? The answer is no, there is no sound, because a sound is something that somebody hears. If there's no one there to hear it, there is no sound. And therefore, if I say something and my child is not listening, there is no sound. There's no communication. It's just a one-way street. And therefore, I have to put myself as the parent, as the responsible party, hopefully, the responsible party, put my child, and sometimes when we're the spouse and we're calm and the other spouse is hurt or in a bad place, then we are the responsible, logical party, and the spouse is the weak link. We have to put our spouse in a position where they can hear us. It's our responsibility. If we're the sane one at that moment, if we're the mature one at that moment, if we're the responsible one at that moment, if we're the calm one at that moment, then it's our job to put the other person in a position where they can hear, absorb, and then communicate and negotiate. Otherwise, it's just a unilateral conversation. Now, this proposal of, in the heat of the moment, causing the other person to hear me is very difficult. And yet, that is why relationships are so challenging, because we have to learn how to do that. And therefore, we have to remain, here's a big word, it's a tough word, in the midst of our conversations, in the midst of our emotional interplay, we have to remain conscious, not unconscious, but conscious. Now, we've dealt with consciousness in the first 3 sessions of our Resilient Single Mother program, and that is how to attain consciousness, how to attain a measure of inner equilibrium, inner calm, by going to your soul state. Step 1 was learning your wheel of strengths. What are your strengths? Step 2, go to your emotional, beautiful place. Step 3, circle of control. What can you control? Step 4, let thoughts pass. Step 5, change cognitive distortions into correct statements and have a positive mantra. Step 6, heal your inner child, the inner child who's in pain from an upbringing which feels unheard, unaccepted, undervalued. And we get triggered in that in marriage, and we respond from our inner child. And step 7, choosing love over fear. If we follow these 7 steps and we review them all the time, it's an ongoing process of self-analysis, self-review, self-introspection, to review and to remain conscious all the time, to put yourself in a conscious state all the time. You can retain emotional equanimity, emotional balance, emotional calm, stay cool, even though you're in an interplay which may get heated. We have to remain the conscious one. And that way we can retain our self-esteem. In that way we can retain our self-esteem while being hurt. And that's a very hard thing to do, but that's why the steps that I have outlined in the 7-step program of attaining consciousness are so important to be reviewed all the time. I invite you to go back to the first 3 sessions of the Resilient Single Mother on our Zoom archive here at Yisrael Roll YouTube channel, and look at them under the playlist called Resilient Single Mother, and play them and review them all the time, because this is something that is on an ongoing basis to work on ourselves. That's personal musar, personal introspection, personal holding myself to a higher standard by being conscious. And if I do that, then I can learn how to put the other person in a position where they can hear me.
Don't give me an attitude. I'm trying to explain why you can't go on an overnight trip until you speak to Dad. And he has to speak to the chaperone, and I speak to, I'm talking to you. Don't you turn your back on me. You are so rude.
Now, when we get frustrated and we are not conscious and we get hurt, our ego gets hurt by a child turning their back on us, then we could lash out with angry accusation, saying, you are rude. Well, here is a violation of Rabbi Twersky's rule of not attacking the character of the child, maintaining their self-esteem, even though they're doing something wrong. It's a very important rule that my Rebbe and mentor, Rabbi Twersky, Zichrono Livracha, said, and that is that we have to maintain a child's self-esteem even in the midst of discipline, which means we cannot attack their character. We have to talk about our feelings, and we have to talk about the situation, but don't attack the person's character. You are a good person. What you're doing, turning your back on me right now, is inappropriate. But you're such a good girl. Right now, you are upset, so you're turning your back on me. I am hurt by that. That could maintain the child's self-esteem. So let us use the second example and see how we can do it a little better. If the mother is able to access her conscious self, then she will be able to use an I message instead of a you message. When you say you, you're attacking and putting the other person in a position where they have to defend themselves. What would the mother say here? Instead of accusing, say what you feel or say what you would like. Let's show this example.
I get upset when I'm in the middle of a sentence and someone walks out on me. If what I'm saying bothers you, just tell me and I will listen.
Sorry, Mom. It was all getting just too complicated for me. So the child, the teenager, is saying that she was getting overwhelmed by all these rules and regulations about talk to daddy, talk to the chaperone, talk to me, and you're saying no, and all that people. She got confused. And when she lost her sense of inner peace, inner consciousness, she lashed out. That's why we lash out. That's why we get irritated. That's why we get angry. That's why we raise our voices, because we lose our ability to access our higher self, our conscious self. And teenagers are more likely to hear you when you tell them how you feel rather than how rude or wrong they are. And that's the rule of not attacking a person's character. Here's the reverse. Here is when a child loses it. And we'll see whether or not the child should have been able to hold themselves back by not saying a rude thing or an irresponsible thing or a Chutzpadik thing to the parent. Let's see what happens. Sometimes parents make kids angry.
Don't tell me you're going out looking like that.
What's wrong with the way I look?
It's a stupid look.
I think your look is stupid. Now, when teenagers are insulted, when anyone is insulted, they're sometimes tempted to return the insult. Now, what I found here in this book, and we're working from this book called How to Talk So Teens Will Listen, and How to Listen So Teens Will Talk by Faber and Maislish, an excellent Bible, an excellent book on relationships. I think it's much broader. These lessons are much broader than just parents and teenagers or parents and children. They apply to spouses, they apply to siblings, they apply to colleagues, they apply in all situations. It's a methodology of speaking and communicating. It does not only apply to children. That's why this is a much broader experience that we're working on together than merely just children and parents, and teenagers and parents. So let's try that again. Instead of counterattacking, if the child felt good about themselves, and I don't know whether the child is responsible for that, but let's see whether the parent and child can come up with a better response.
Don't tell me you're going out looking like that.
What's wrong with the way I look?
It's a stupid look.
Oh, hey, Dad, that hurts. I like what I'm wearing. I know it's not your taste, but I wish you to respect mine. In this example, the teenager said, I am hurt when you speak that way. The antidote to escalating an argument is using the technique called the I message. I am hurt by that. I am disappointed. I am frustrated. I am upset. I am angry. If I say I am hurt, what would you say to me? If I say I am hurt, you're more likely to say to me, I'm sorry you're hurt. What happened? If I say you are hurting me, yeah, the other person is likely to say, you caused it. You're bothering me. You're annoying me. And we escalate. So the word you is a fighting word. The you word is an argumentative. It's a offensive word because it puts the other person on the defensive. The way to de-escalate an argument is to say, I am feeling disappointed. I am feeling sad. I am feeling embarrassed. I am feeling hurt right now. And that is a key to de-escalating an argument. Let's get down to tachlis, which means brass tacks. In the heat of the moment, how can I use an I message when someone is insulting me, when someone is hurting my feelings, when someone is criticizing and complaining? It seems that in the heat of the moment, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for us to retain the I message methodology. In other words, what we usually do is if a child gets upset, they're not going to say, I feel hurt, Mom. They're going to run away and slam the door. Or they're going to curse under their breath. Or they're going to run out of the house. Or they're going to go into their room and play music really loud. Or they're going to do push-ups. Or they're going to pick a fight with their brother. So in real life, does it really happen that a person goes, I'm feeling hurt, Mom. That hurts my feelings. That's a real tall order, isn't it? In the heat of the moment. If we talk tachlis, we talk brass tacks, we talk the real deal, we talk real-time situations. And what about parents? When a child says to a parent, I'm not listening to you, you're an old-fashioned, out-of-date, out-of-touch person who is not with the program, right? Oh, really? Oh, really? Yeah? So I'm supposed to say, I am hurt by that, dear. Can you say that again nicely, right? It's very, very unlikely that I'm going to say that in the heat of the moment. What I would do, sometimes, if you ask parents what they would do, a parent would say, I would go and cry. I would have a tantrum. I would yell at everybody. I would yell at my child. I would go to the freezer and finish off a pint of ice cream. I'd eat over it. Or I'd call my sister and complain about my child. Or I'd take an aspirin, or worse. Our ego is going to get hurt by somebody during the next day, during the next week, if not more than once, twice, or 3 times. And therefore, we need to practice. Therefore, we need to practice now to put ourselves in an emotionally calm state, knowing the argument is going to come, knowing the attack is going to come, knowing the criticism is going to come. It's impossible to live life without our ego getting hurt. And therefore, we have to remind ourselves that can I tell the other person what I want or what I feel or what I need instead of blaming or accusing them or attacking them with a you statement? If I can train myself and prepare myself now in these sessions and think about that before we get into the altercation, and it's going to come, then we need practice. And in these situations, we are going to either keep calm and say, I am feeling hurt, and practice that, or we're going to escalate and it'll turn into an argument and we'll have a negative relationship with our spouse or with our child or with our sibling or with our parent or with our colleague. So before we interact, and we know we're going to get into ego, bashing ego situations, it's going to happen. Is it going to better the relationship or is it going to strain the relationship? And if I am going to react that way, if I'm going to lose my self-control, I have to realize that I am losing control over the relationship. If I choose to lose it, that's a good line. If I choose to lose it in any situation, I have to know that because of my free will, I have a free will to choose to lose it or to control myself. If I choose to lose it with my spouse or with my child or with my parent or my colleague, I know that I'm going to give myself over to a negative interaction. It's going to hurt the relationship. So therefore, I have to try to work on myself. Now it's working on myself. It's not the child. It's not the teenager. It's not the other person. It's me. I need to take responsibility for myself. Of course, they have to learn the same thing we're learning now. But we have to be the mature one. We have to be the more responsible one, the sane one, the calm one, the one who's working on ourselves, the person who's doing personal self-development, personal growth, and know that I know it's going to happen. Therefore, I have to practice my conscious state, going into my conscious state, and realize if I choose to lose it, I'm going to lose in the end because the relationship is going to be hurt. And therefore, I have to realize that I'm really hurting myself. If I lose it, I'm really hurting myself because the child and I will no longer have a good relationship. And what I'm looking for here is a long-term good relationship with the child, the teenager, to be able to influence, to guide, to teach that child. And if I lose it and argue with or put down or criticize or judge, then in the long term, I'm going to hurt that relationship. At the end of the day, our job is to negotiate a solution to this difference of opinion. It's not going to be argued out or lashed out or criticized out or judged out. It's only going to come when two people are able to hear each other. It's only going to happen when two people are in a position to hear each other, to negotiate, to mediate. And that's only when there are no tempers. Rather, I put myself in a position of calm in my state of consciousness and say, I am feeling hurt. And the other person says, I too am feeling hurt. If we do this and put ourselves in a state of consciousness, then we're going to be able to put the other person in a position where they can hear us, and then we can negotiate a solution without escalation and without hurting the relationship. So our job now is to work on ourselves and realize that we have to work on ourselves by maintaining consciousness, know that the argument is going to come. Our egos are going to get hurt. But if we rise above the ego and go to the state of consciousness, we're going to be able to use our I message and therefore de-escalate the situation.